All right, my friends, welcome to episode 433 of Prof and Dev Play Games. My name is Larry. I am the professor. I play video games, and I can be found at Prof Plays Games on Blue Sky. Today, we have a special guest, Jenna, who is a QA functional tester for Activision. She is here to talk to us about her experience in the industry, her experience doing QA testing and what that's like, and also her experience with unionization in the industry. As you know, I am a leader in my faculty union, and unionization is a topic that is of great interest to me. I come from a union family my whole life, really, and obviously joined my faculty union the first day that I came on campus, and now I'm in leadership there. And Dev and I have talked a lot about unionization in the industry. So this interview that I did with Jenna was really eye-opening for me because it's certainly a different industry than education, and she was able to answer some of the questions that I had about how a first contract works, what that opening card election looks like, and opportunities and concerns of unionization in the video game industry. So, without further ado, I will toss to the interview. All right, my friends, we've got Jenna here. She is a QA functional tester with Activision Blizzard, and I've invited her here to talk about her experiences in the video game industry and also unionization and unionization efforts in the video game industry. It is the sweet spot of my interest because I am a co-president of a faculty union myself, and I play a lot of video games, but I do not work in the industry. The Dev does, and he's not here. Jenna, how you doing?
Doing very well.
Awesome. So thank you for being here. Thanks for talking about unionization and video games. I hope there are things that you're excited to talk about.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. It's become a really big passion for me.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been a topic that's come on and off in our podcast because of my work in unions and then the devs' work in the industry, and just talking about the viability and watching over the years, at least from my vantage, and maybe you have a different perspective, that seems to be growing. Unionization efforts for sure.
Yeah, I definitely do think it's been growing pretty rapidly, especially post-pandemic when a lot of people were working from home and now coming back into office. I think a lot of people are getting really frustrated with how they are being treated at the workplace, and it's been leading to a lot of new unions cropping up.
Awesome. There's so much to dig in there. I want to ask you a bunch of questions. Before we do, though, do you want to introduce yourself? I know I gave a short introduction to you, but do you want to go further and say anything else before we get going into the questions?
I mean, I think you did great. I'm
awesome. Okay, A+ for me so far.
Yeah.
Okay, I always like to start with video games, talking about what are you playing right now?
Ooh, okay. So I have been playing a lot of Hades 2 now that the early access just dropped.
Yes.
And I actually also have been getting into Persona 3 Reloaded since I got that recently on Game Pass. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I wish the Dev were here. He platinumed it recently before he went to Japan. I played about 5 hours of that, and I love the story. I had a hard time with, what is it? Is it Tartarus? Is that the tower? Do we have that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But Hades 2, boy, how many hours you put into that?
Oh, I have been no-lifing it since it's
nice.
Really, it's not at 100 hours, close to it.
That's cool. I think I got to Hecate. I got to her twice, beat her the second time, and then got to the area after Hecate and just got my ass kicked. So I'm that's about as far as I've gotten, but I put, probably 80 hours into Hades 1. It was our game of the year in 2020. It's just incredible. And the music is really, really good.
Yeah, it's incredible.
All right, so what about favorite game of all time?
Favorite game of all time? Transistor is the one that always comes to mind for me. Another one from Supergiant Studios. They are my favorite studio of all time, I think. But yeah, it's always just had a really special spot in my heart.
I still think back fondly on Transistor because of how different it is than other games. Did you play it on PlayStation or did you play on a different console?
I I played it on mobile my first time playing it.
Oh, dang. Okay.
Yeah.
How was that experience?
Well, I found it because I was looking for games just to have on my phone, because at the time my phone was like the only console I had outside of my Wii and my DS.
Oh, sure.
And I misread the title when I saw it. I thought it was Transistor, and I'm like, hell yeah, that's me.
There we go. Give it to me. And then you must have been pleasantly surprised when you started playing it.
I was blown away by it. And ever since then, I just like dove into Supergiant games as a developer, and all of them have been hits because I never played Pyre. So if I don't play it, they're all hits.
I was going to ask you next, what did you think about Pyre? That's awesome. Wow. The reason why I asked about the PlayStation, because I played it, Dev played it and then told me to play it, and I played it, and it had this, the swords, the sword speaks to you in that game, but it spoke only through the controller. So everything else was on the TV, and then the sword's voice was through the controller, and I thought that was really cool.
That's fascinating.
It's really cool. If you didn't have that experience, it doesn't really change it that much, but it was certainly, he didn't tell me ahead of time, and I was like, whoa, that surprised the hell out of me.
Yeah.
God, I love that. But I also have not played Pyre. I play all the others. That's awesome. Maybe I should correct that this year. So you're QA functional tester at Activision. I'm going to ask a very dumb question and then ask you about how you got into the industry. But the dumb question is QA functional tester. What is it that you do day to day?
It's a lot of taking requests from devs for like, hey, check out this set of guns, or go through the store and make sure that these bundles are working correctly. And it's just a lot of test sweeps from developer requests. And in addition to that, each day we'll go and do like a big playtest with the devs that we work with. Go in and test some new maps or new modes and give feedback on it as well, which is a big part that I like. Yeah, it's a fun job, engaging.
And that piece, the last piece that you mentioned there, is that something that's more driven by you, and that here's a big space, go and find what you can find here, or are they still giving you parameters?
It's a lot of both, really. There will be times where they give us a new map and say, hey, go at it, have fun.
Yeah.
Other times they're looking for very specific things. And it's just up to what the day's like, really.
That's cool. How long are your days?
9 hours if you count the unpaid lunch.
Okay.
It's long.
Yeah, that's a long. I always imagine QA, and maybe this is, I don't know, stereotypical, but I imagine it's very repetitive and can get kind of boring. I don't know if that's true. Siri, shut up. God.
There are days where it gets boring, especially if we have a long time where we're not given a QA request or a QAR. We'll have weeks at a time without any new ones, and those are the most grueling, because the only thing you really can do on days like that are just go through, look at old bugs and see whether or not they were fixed.
So you're just kind of doing the same thing over and over and over. Well, I'm sorry, my Siri just popped up. I have turned Siri off now, so hopefully that won't pop up again. That has never happened. There's a first. Okay, so how'd you get involved in the industry? And did you come in through QA or some other avenue?
Well, I entered first through QA, and I feel like I kind of got into the industry by accident or by luck, really. At the time, I was taking calls for the unemployment office, doing customer support for them. And that was a soul-sucking job.
Yeah.
I would not recommend that to anybody. So I was looking for a way to get out of it, and I saw an ad on Instagram that looked like a scam, really. It was like, do you want to make money working and playing video games all day? And at the time, I was living with my parents, and I thought, wow, I'm probably going to get my identity stolen if I do this, but it'd be really funny if it works, and it did.
That's crazy. And was it for Activision, or was it for...
It was for Activision. Okay. I didn't even really know what job I was applying for until I was in training.
Oh, wow. Because it was secretive, or they just didn't give a lot of details?
It's just a really sketchy application process through the contractor they were going through.
Oh, interesting. Huh. Well, that gives me some insight into how this all works. What do you like about being in the industry, other than getting paid to play video games?
Ultimately, I think it's kind of a cliche, but it's an industry of passion. There's so many people who love what they do, and I love seeing how they grow. And ultimately, where I'm at in the company is I'm happy to be where I'm at and fighting for people's rights through the union. And I've kind of taken on more of an organizer perspective on my work and less of game development aspect.
And so how does that work in terms, my understanding is like you've recently unionized, right? You recently voted in your section or sector. Maybe you can tell us about that process, about what happened and where you're at right now with that.
So we were officially recognized as of early February.
And was it voluntary recognition?
Yes.
Okay.
So the way that it really worked was we, CWA, negotiated an agreement with Microsoft during their acquisition, requesting a neutrality deal.
Right.
And through this deal, we would support their merger as long as they guarantee that they will not do any form of union busting or hostility towards those trying to form a union.
Right.
Really just enshrining the federal protections that there are already.
Right. Like making them follow them, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that was a major, major help in getting it to form. And through that, we ended up having a week of access sort of thing where we could have some of our organizers and some employees take time off from working so that they could sit in the break room and get people signed up, getting signatures, talking to people, answering their questions. And during that week of access, there was layoffs, there was the first week back in office, there was a COVID outbreak, like all of these major factors slammed at us at the same time that led us to really get skyrocketing support for the union.
That's interesting, because when you were going through that list, I was thinking those are hurdles that are going to hurt access and hurt numbers, but it did the opposite.
It did the exact opposite, because people were so frustrated with Activision's response to those things that they signed up right away after.
Oh my gosh. So you're sitting there ready to have this fight to sign people up, and then Activision is performing in such a way that's like gifting you people who are asking you questions that lead them toward voting yes, basically.
Exactly.
That's awesome. So when the vote came, what was the percentage?
We had, I believe, I had the numbers somewhere, but I think it was like 300 to 6. Like it was a landslide.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Jesus. So I have a question later. You know, I gave you a sequence of questions before, but I think I'll hop into the the unionization vote to the first contract. Do you have a contract yet?
We don't. We're actually not even with our bargaining committee fully elected yet, because it's been...
Oh, this is very new.
Yeah, it's very new. We're still trying to get a lot of things hammered out. And we're also split between 3 locations.
Okay. That's interesting.
So we have Minnesota, LA, and Texas. We're all under AQUA, which is the Activision Quality Assurance United. And so LA and Minnesota already got their bargaining committee elected.
Got it.
But we were a little slower behind because after our, massive uptick of support when we got everyone signed up, it got back to typical Texas, Southern support for a union where people were a little more hesitant.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because Minnesota and California being blue states just in general, and Texas being red, I was going to ask if there's red tape or resistance, and maybe there's some of that.
It definitely did have a lot slower support after we got our recognition, because after we got the recognition, people needed to sign more official cards to say, hey, I'm going to join the union.
Right.
At this point, they felt like they already signed their their intent, or it was essentially signing up saying, hey, I intend to form a union, and that wasn't their actual signing up to join the union yet.
Right.
But a lot of the feeling was that it was that already, and it felt like doubling down for a lot of people. And I think that garnered a lot of frustration and has slowed down our ability to get full majority. We have since gotten our supermajority of card signers, but it was a lot slower.
So they felt like, was it more like, I already did this, I don't need to do it again kind of thing? Or they were starting to have second thoughts?
It was exactly like that. Okay. Yeah, it was I already did this, I don't need to do it again.
Yep.
Why are you asking me to do this again?
Yep.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. It's because there are steps to this. There's a process we have to follow.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you're getting there. Okay. And then next is electing the negotiating team, basically.
Yeah, we should actually have that finished tomorrow, I believe. I believe it was the 20th that we're going to finally have our committee selected.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, we are recording this on May 19th, but publishing in about a week and a half. So it'll be in the past. Well, good luck to that then. What, I guess in general, like taking a step back, what got you interested in unionization or union work?
Well, it was a process. The union that we formed was actually not the first time we tried at Activision.
Okay.
We tried originally a couple years back when California proposed a whole bunch of lawsuits against Activision for their treatment of workers and some sexual assault scandals in the office. We tried to form a union back then, and there just wasn't enough support. And Activision was a lot more hostile towards us back then because it was before we were acquired by Microsoft.
Right.
It was an uphill battle, and we didn't make it. And at the time, I was very scared to get involved because of how hostile they were.
Mm-hmm.
Then flash forward to recently, when we're forming our union the second time with the return to office. And, I join a union meeting when they're asking for people, and I tell them, hey, I don't know how involved I'm going to be on this. I saw how it went last time. I don't think it's going to be too much different, but I'll see what it's like. And I was fully intending to just maybe sit in for that first meeting and go.
Yeah.
Well, that same night, I stayed up till 3 a.m. combing through a list of different names on Slack to fill out a spreadsheet of people so we can get card signers. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even realize how much work I put into it until that morning.
And you're like, okay, I'm more than just joining a meeting. I'm going to be doing some work here. Well, I laugh because I think back to all the people who, almost to a person that's in our union leadership. How did you get there? And their answer is usually, I went to a meeting.
Yeah.
Just showed up once and then got roped into it. I mean, they care about it obviously too, but it's just funny how it often starts that way. What's challenging about, maybe this is both things, challenging about working in the video game industry and also maybe challenging about unionizing in the video game industry?
Working in the industry, it's hard because we actually at Activision QA have not had to go through a lot of the crunch that you hear about in the industry. Mm-hmm. So it has been relatively better than most. But there's still been a lot of challenges despite that. We're having to fight with a lot of bad management decisions. A lot of doubling down on things that don't make a lot of sense. I'll give an example of the other day. Someone was asking to have a fan on their desk, and that had to go through accommodations because HR, I guess, didn't want to put a lot of thought into it.
In that they wanted to just say no and it had to go through accommodations, or they wanted to go through accommodations to say yes?
Their way of saying no, this is my belief on the matter. I believe that their way of saying no was to say, go through accommodations. I won't do it myself. Because accommodations right now is so backed up with a lot of other stuff that it wasn't going to be done in a reasonable time.
That's interesting, because I think about our work with accommodations where it's sort of big stuff, not a fan on a desk. I wonder why that's... What's your take on why that would be accommodations? Just to slow it down, or there was actually a reason why it would be that?
I don't think there was an actual reason. I think it was a means of pushing the work onto someone else, is my theory on the matter.
So if that person brought a fan, we're talking about like a regular fan, right?
Yeah, like a little fan you can set on your desk.
So if they brought it in themselves and put it on their desk, is that going to be like discipline?
They didn't bring one in themselves. They were asking for one. Right. Because day one, when we came into office, they gave out fans to people.
I see.
But if you weren't there that day one,
got it,
then you didn't get a fan.
And if they're providing the fans, there's no reason to buy your own when the company's provided them for people. Right.
But then they stopped providing them after that day one. So then since then, you haven't had a chance.
I'm so sad that so many illogical decisions are not just... I always think in our work at my college, that doesn't make any sense, but I'm sure it's logical elsewhere. No, that's not true. It's not logical anywhere. And then, gosh, thinking about the contract, thinking about moving from, we've got people signing the cards. We're going to get our team together. What kinds of things are you pushing for in that first contract? Or what would be like an ideal first contract in your mind?
Well, right now, we did send out a survey to all of our members asking what they want on a first contract and to rank the different things. I haven't seen the results of that yet. Because we were waiting until our committee was elected.
Sure.
Though, if I'm to guess, I think the top priorities that a lot of people want, and the ones that I personally think should be pushed for the most, are layoff protections, a cost of living or inflation adjustment, and last of all, some flexibility to work from home.
Mm-hmm. So in your section, is everyone then forced to come back face to face?
Yes. Everybody.
Okay. Right. And is that the same in Minnesota and California too?
It was. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
And when we first started working, it was full work from home. And then eventually they brought it to a hybrid home and office.
Right.
And then after that, it was full in office.
And is that because of the logistics of managing a team from home? Is it about leaks and security? Like, what is their message, why they want to do it, and what do you really think it is about?
The thing they always tell us is that it makes communication easier. Mm-hmm. But I don't put a lot of credence into that, because the majority of the time when we're talking to our team members in the office, we get told to quiet down. We're too loud, apparently.
That's why you brought us together, for us to talk to each other. You want me to just use Slack? I can do that from home.
Yeah. So everybody's sitting in a Zoom call when they're sitting next to each other.
Oh my gosh, that's unbelievable. I mean, that's totally believable, but my God. In terms of CWA, the Communication Workers of America, what kind of support did they? You mentioned that they talked to Microsoft during the acquisition, but during the vote and then since, what's their support look like?
Well, already we've been able to have a ton of support from them. I think my favorite example that's come up recently was some status quo maintenance that we've been able to do. We had recently had a situation where a manager wanted to change a policy on how breaks would work if you're working overtime. Mm-hmm. So if you choose to do the voluntary overtime after your shift, they would require you to take a 30-minute unpaid break if you were going to work over 2 hours past your scheduled shift end. That would effectively make it so that if somebody wanted to work until 10 o'clock, for example, they would instead have to work until 10:30 if they wanted a whole 10 hours of pay.
Right.
And it just wasn't feasible for some people.
Right, because they're like pushing the timeline back even further into the night.
Exactly. Yeah. And what we were able to do was said, okay, we'll acquiesce on that for now, but we brought that up with our lawyers and team with CWA. They brought it up with Activision and said, hey, we're having this problem. What's up with that? This shouldn't have changed. And Activision said, oh, what's up with that? We didn't mean to change this. We'll talk to this person immediately. And just a couple days later, the policy was reversed.
Yep, of course. That's good. That's good support. I think about our work, too, where a dean says something to a faculty member, and the faculty member is like, that's not how this is supposed to go. And they reach out to us. We reach out to the dean or the district, and then it's suddenly reversed because someone was either going rogue or intentionally or unintentionally. And then the district's able to kind of line them back up.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's a lot of saving receipts of what people have said.
Mm-hmm. And it's so much of union leadership is certainly keeping those communications, keeping those emails, and just bringing them back out. You said this. Here's what the contract says. Oh, yeah, you're right. In terms of, I don't know if you're not at this. Tell me if I don't know when this comes in because I wasn't at the beginning of my union. Paying dues. When does that rate get decided? Is that up? Is that coming, or has that already happened?
The rate is decided, but union dues won't be required of any of our members until after our first contract is negotiated and put into place.
That's interesting. So theoretically, if that is delayed, you won't be collecting dues, but you would still have some sort of duty of fair representation to your members, or not yet?
Exactly. That's exactly how it'd be. In fact, one of our sister unions with ZeniMax, another company under Microsoft that organized through CWA, they took a year to bargain their first contract because it was just a lot of back and forth pushback.
Oh, yeah.
And they had support from CWA that whole year, even when they weren't dues-paying members yet.
Okay, so CWA will step in and help with representation?
Yes.
So, okay, that's interesting because you're not pushing money towards CWA, but you will be eventually. So it's in their best interest to make sure that you're protected until that contract is done and beyond, of course.
Exactly.
Interesting. Yeah, 'cause I've never been on the ground floor of the beginning of a union. It was 20 years old by the time I took over. So that's so cool. Speaking about the layoffs and speaking about ZeniMax and what just happened with Tango and Arcane Austin, and you had mentioned, the ideal contract being layoff protection. What does layoff protection look like in that type of contract? What does it look like? Or what can it look like?
So there's a couple different ways that I think it could be gone about. A big one is saying, okay, if you're going to lay off any members of the union, then after doing so, if you're going to hire someone back into that same position, you have to first hire from people that you laid off.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And if they turn it down, then they can go ahead and hire from different people. But it highly disincentivizes laying them off, because then you're just getting the same talent back.
Right. So why do it? Yeah. Unless they're just wiping out an entire studio.
Yeah.
So in ZeniMax, I don't know the history of any unionization in ZeniMax. Were there any first contracts in the affected areas? Probably not Tango. That's Japanese, but.
ZeniMax has gotten their first contract. I don't know the whole details of it.
Okay.
But as far as contracts in the industry go, there have been several. I know there was a Sega union.
Right, that's right.
In CWA that got their first contract recently. And I want to say there was one with Raven Software as well.
Right, is that New York?
Yes. Albany.
Yeah, that's right. Am I mistaken? Are they under Activision?
They are.
Okay, right. Okay. Yeah, because the dev and I have talked quite a bit, and I've thought about it too, about what layoff protections look like. Because certainly in our contracts for our faculty, if there's a RIF, reduction in force, it's basically by department, and then their seniority kicks in. So there's those kind of protections. You get shifted if you have the ability to teach in a different department, et cetera. But that makes a lot of sense. Haven't thought about it in that way, where if you get laid off and they're going to rehire you, you're looking at the pool that you laid off first. Mm-hmm. And you've seen that in other contracts, or have you seen that in action in other areas of the sectors of the industry at all?
That's what I've seen in other sectors of the industry. I know other video game unions have gone to that as their option in the past, and I think it would be a very good one for us. Yeah,
sounds good. The dev wanted me to ask a question. He's not here. He's in Japan, but he had a question about unions in like Hollywood, basically, and their model centered around the guild unions in the movie industry. And he wanted to know if you think there could be something like a game designers guild / union, or a game engineering union, obviously a QA union. Do you think that's the future, or is it just like a whole bunch of different kinds of things?
I think there's definitely a lot of potential for it. Earlier this year, I was at GDC, Game Developers Conference, and I was talking with a member of SAG-AFTRA who was there. He was telling me about how the video games industry has been very underrepresented as far as a lot of these big guild unions go. SAG has been helping with voice actors in games.
Yeah.
But outside of that, there hasn't been a lot. I know IATSE and CWA have been trying to build up more unions in the industry. I haven't seen anywhere else, personally.
Yeah, there's a CFT conference, California Federation of Teachers, and the vice president of SAG-AFTRA was there. I don't remember her name. I know she's the daughter of Colin Powell, but I can't remember her name off the top of my head. But she dug in a little bit to the voice actors, the unionization efforts, and the contract, because they're moving towards a strike at that point. I don't think they've struck right now. But it was mainly focused on AI. AI protections is what they were mainly bargaining over, besides compensation increases.
And I think that's a big one that should be done, is a lot of protections for AI, because the Writers Guild isn't looking for game writers, but they should be protected.
Yeah, they should, absolutely. I wonder, so what kind of protections do you see being necessary in your contracts or other contracts for AI?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah. And I ask fully knowing that it's tough for us, because we are now thinking about it for our teachers' contracts. And it's like, how do we approach this? It's a big topic.
Yeah, I really don't know. I think I would have to look at what other AI protections have been like in other industries and tailor it from there.
Yeah.
But it's just not immediately relevant to where my union's at with QA, so I haven't done a ton of research into it.
Yeah, because I was thinking ahead of time about AI. 'Cause we've been talking about this weekend for my union, for my team. But thinking, obviously, voice actors, making sure that if AI is trained off your voice, you're compensated for it. The writers, obviously, there's a very clear line between them and AI. I don't know if AI is able to test the games. Is that a fear? Is that something on the horizon?
I don't see it there, but it is possible. There is some aspect of automated testing from the work that I've done, but it's very limited. It is very difficult to even get to work to begin with. The most that I've seen it do is, for an example, if you need to get to a really, really high round in zombies mode, for example, you might have a bot that is set up to be, invincible, just shoots every zombie and immediately moves on to the next phase. It's not realistic to how the gameplay is going to be, but it can help you test what round 10,000's like. It reminds me of, I guess, like the developer console, right? Where you can put in cheats to move to different parts of the game or have different items equipped or whatever to kind of test all of that. God, I can't imagine how many permutations of things you have to test. The dev would understand, but I don't. So what's next? You're talking about the vote tomorrow to get the negotiating team together, but once you do that and all 3 negotiating teams are set in California, Texas, and Minnesota, what's next? After that vote, I think we're moving to the bargaining table from there. In Texas, we're going to have 2 seats at the table. LA is a smaller office, so they get 1 seat, and Minnesota is the largest, so they have 3. And I am excited to see where it goes and how it's going to work. I know a couple of the people that we'll be talking to in a very limited sense. All very new to me, so I'm not sure how it's going to go.
Well, I wish you luck. I think working at the table is some of my favorite work. It can be.
I'm excited for it. I know it's going to be a lot.
Yeah, it can be intimidating. It's a lot, but also when you get those wins or you catch the other team doing something stupid, it's pretty exhilarating.
Yeah, I've thrown my head into the bargaining committee elections. I'm hoping I get elected and get to join them at the table. But if not, I'll be there on the advisory committee to help them out in the work that they're doing.
Awesome. Well, good luck to you on that. Before we move out of the unionization questions to ask another video game question, anything else that I didn't ask that you wanted to say about any of it?
No, I think you've covered a lot.
All right. Thorough questions, another A+. Thank you. So video games, we talked about favorite game of all time. We talked about what you're playing now, but looking forward across the rest of the year, anything else that's on the horizon that you are excited to get your hands on eventually?
Well, I am one of many on the eternal waiting list for Silk Song.
Oh my God. We're all clowns. Every single direct.
It'll come. I know it.
Oh my gosh. It has to come this year. I do Fantasy Critic with the dev, and every year I've picked it up first in my draft, and last year it didn't come out. This year I can't. It has to. It must. I cannot wait. I want it so bad.
I'm so excited for it.
Oh God. All right. Well, awesome. Well, Jenna, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And you're welcome back anytime. We'd love updates if you're ever interested in coming back and giving us some.
I would love to. And thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Thanks for listening, and we will be back after the break with more. All right. Thanks one more time to Jenna for joining us. That was very insightful for me, and I hope it was insightful for you. As I close out this podcast, I want to thank you for listening. Remind you to rate us on your podcast service of choice. Tell a friend. And if you're new, please subscribe, follow us, and also check out our side podcast, The RPG Backlog. It's a game podcast where I go through my backlog with friends. It's a way for me to be social with the games in my backlog and stop spending money on new games. So please check it out, the RPG Backlog. We started with Final Fantasy XII, and after that we will be moving into Undertale, which will be a lot of fun. Last, before I get out of here, I do want to urge all of you to check out Animal Well. Animal Well is an indie game developed by Billy Basso and put out by, I think it was Big Mode in the last week or so, and it is just a sublime puzzler, 2D pixel art, gorgeous, and just replete with secrets and puzzles, and it's really wonderful. So please check it out, and we'll see you next week. Next week, we're going to have a few friends on to talk about Helldivers and what makes Helldivers so good. So hope you'll join us. See you next week.